do you have a question or?
Just wanting to get your perspective on this, given that there will be a huge undertaking, and I want to find out what the organization is thinking about it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Madam Chair and committee members, Jesse Salinas. I am the assessor, clerk, recorder, and register of voters for Yolo County. I'm also serving as president of the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials. So very honored to be here. Thank you very much for the question. And I can share with you that we are working diligently. We're a very collection of highly skilled professionals that are preparing for this election, this pending election that's coming up. And we are working diligently right now in preparing for the election and identifying the necessary sites and locations and preparing accordingly with that. We've also are working closely with the Secretary of State's office on follow-up details to ensure that this election is run as efficiently and effectively as possible moving forward.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Vice Chair Macedo.
I will leave my feelings on this out of this because I have 15 minutes and I want to make sure that I get my questions answered. How can the legislature justify spending $235 million on a rush special election when core programs like education, healthcare, and wildfire prevention are being cut?
So first off, I want to say we're in this crisis because of the federal administration. And this election is going to cost as much as a new ballroom that President Trump wants to build at the White House.
We have the fourth largest economy in the world and a large budget, so we can't figure out how to fund those things. We're expecting the federal government to do that. My next question is, why was this urgency election necessary when no genuine emergency exists? The governor has not declared a state of emergency. Just feeling like we should sound the alarms is not enough to do so. There's an urgency clause in here.
Again, this is a crisis brought upon us because of what the state of Texas is doing. If they would pull back their measure, we would not be moving forward today with this urgency. It is a crisis. What is happening to our families, in our neighborhoods? This is how Californians have a direct response in what is occurring in the future that they want to see for this country.
So because you feel that way, but no real emergency has been declared, how will counties be reimbursed for these costs?
The Department of Finance will determine the cost for this election. That will be through the Secretary of State as well as to the county registrars to administer the election on November 4th.
Will they be paid in full upfront or left to bear the burden themselves?
The Secretary of State, I know perhaps we have folks here, or Madam Chair.
My understanding is the counties will be paid up front.
Is that in the language of the bill? Because counties like mine won't be able to do the election to the extent necessary.
As a former county elections official, this is something I care very deeply about, and we want to make sure the counties are made whole and they receive the funds up front.
So can we get that in the bill?
It is in the
It
bill.
is stated. That's so.
Okay.
It is very clear that counties will be made whole to administer the election on November 4th.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that my county, who's very rural, is going to be taken care of. You made a really great point that I have questions, but I do want to mention that you talk about disenfranchising minority communities. At the Independent Redistricting Commission hearings, they have translators available. To my knowledge, we have no translators available for this hearing. So talk about disenfranchising minority communities. What assurance do counties have that they will not be subject to unfunded mandates by being forced to carry out this rush process?
Again, it is stated in the bill and the analysis of the bill.
Can you point to the exact language in the bill
You
or your
have
attorneys?
the analysis before you.
I'm not
Again,
asking
we
for the
are making
analysis.
sure
I'm
that
asking for the bill language.
the Department of Finance will determine the cost of this election. And at the end of the day, we are going to ensure that the counties will have everything that they need to conduct a special election on November 4th.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're saying that. What I am asking for is verbiage in legislation, and you have an attorney next to you that I'm sure participated in the drafting of this, as well as your ledge director. I'm asking for not just your testimony saying we promise this is going to happen. I'm asking, and not in the analysis, because that's not legally binding.
I got it right here.
Okay.
Section 4A, it says, it is the intent of the legislature to ensure counties have sufficient funding to effectuate the November 4th, 2025 special statewide election. An amount is hereby appropriated from the general fund to the controller for the actual and reasonably necessary costs as determined by the Director of Finance for the counties to conduct that November 4th, 2025 statewide special election. Again, this is not a appropriations committee. The funding issues will be addressed in that committee. We are policy, so let's move our questions back to policy.
And this is a special election bill. So I'm glad that you read that aloud. So we have intent language. We know how much that's legally binding. We have, I'm sure, attorneys in the room that can tell us that. Can counties realistically administer a statewide redistricting election on such a compressed timeline that you talked about without errors, lawsuits, or disenfranchisement?
So we have actually had some tight timelines in the past, and this is going to be a challenge. There's no question there's going to be challenging administrative challenges to this election. But I think in working with what guidelines we have and in working with the Secretary of State's office on looking at some details that we can work collectively to book this election. We've done a lot of successful, difficult elections in the past, and remind everybody of the 2020 election, which was a general election under COVID, and we were able to do amazing work. And I know I have the highest confidence in my colleagues across the state that they will be successful in making it happen with, as long as these details that we're working through are finalized and can be done in a timely fashion.
What is the shortest timeline you've pulled an election together and been successful?
For when I think about the timing, good question. I don't think I can tell you of a specific timeline of what we've done. Typically, we like to have additional timing. That's why in the legislation, one of the things we did ask for is for an E-88 cutoff in the legislation, which was helpful for us because that gives us time to start preparing and not have other add-ons to the legislation. So that was really appreciated on behalf of the members. So there's not a specific timeline that I can tell you the earliest that I've ever run an election. I think it may have been the recall election in the past, but we had a little bit of a heads up on that one. But this is coming through the gate quickly, and that's why we're responding as fast as we can on this.
So this potentially could be the shortest timeline you've pulled an election together.
Could potentially, yes.
Okay. Which also makes me nervous when we've talked in extensive amounts on this committee, particularly about making sure that all voters' voices are heard. And although I can appreciate COVID, it seemed like daily things were changing. It was still during a general election that we knew was coming. So I think that's a little bit different, but seems like you're up for the challenge. So then my next question is this process fair to county registrars and elections officials who already face tremendous pressure to ensure accuracy?
So I know we are, so to understand your question, you're asking if this is
your job is tough enough, and we've
Yes.
heard from our chair, who was an elections official, this is a tough job, and now we are adding even more to your plate.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's very fair that we're demanding more from you guys and not really giving you much of a runway to do it.
Well, I do think that the resources are going to be helpful for sure, because it allows
Resources
us
meaning finances or what other resources?
Funding to be able
Okay.
to actually pay for it, because that is a critical need. And that's why right now I can tell you across the state, there are registrars across the state that have already begun the process, because once we heard that this legislation was coming down the pike, we've begun to make plans. So for example, in my office, we've already begun to go through our checklist and making sure that we get caught up, because there's a checklist that we're going through. So we're quickly navigating that list, and we're reaching out to our vendors, we're reaching out to our locations, because we're expeditiously trying to make sure we are ready for this election. And yes, there's a lot of work ahead. I'm not going to say that there's not, and it's true across the state. So is it going to be a challenge? Yes, there's administrative challenges to such a short timeline, but I do believe that the elections officials in the past, they have stepped up in tremendous ways. Looking again at the 2020 election, I'm proud to say that I'm a member of this membership that has done an amazing job in the past, and I do believe we can rise to the occasion as long as we have the support and the not only the funding, but the little details that we'll be working with Secretary of State to make sure we can be effective in making sure to run these elections.
So state resources have already gone into this process, is what you're telling me?
No, we're planning as if it's coming, because we've read through the legislation that there will be funding for it. So we are moving forward with the assumption that we will be having resources to pay for this election from the state.
Can you walk me through what this planning includes if it doesn't require funding to do? What is this
So,
just
so
in
it
your
is a
brain? You're coming
checklist
up-
where we will contact vendors to make sure that they're able to do the print jobs in time. We will be contacting our locations that we are actually able to have locations available to run these elections, which are critical because if you're a VCA versus a polling place, there's different timelines that are required. So those are factors that we're still working through because we have to be able to line up not only locations, the vendors, we have to get translators. Talking about translators, we have to make sure the translators are ready for all of this. So there's just a myriad of issues. We have a checklist. To give you a context, we have a checklist of some 500 items that we're going through every election. So we're speeding through those to make sure we don't miss anything. So one of the things I take great pride in our association is we are attention to detail. We have our checklist. We will make sure not to skip any of those. Are we going to quickly go through them to try and catch up? Yes, we will. And everybody across the state is doing that. So we are working hard with the anticipation that this is a pending legislation that if it does go through, that we're ready to move forward to the best of our abilities given this very compressed timeline, because it is a compressed timeline. I will acknowledge that.
So no vendors, no locations, nobody has been contacted, just the creation of a checklist.
No, we've been contacting vendors. We actually have been contacting vendors, contacting locations. We are actually trying to lock down all of the locations. We have a few still outstanding for myself in Yolo County. We still have a few outstanding, but we've got most of them locked up. So there's still a process that we have to do to be able to continue to do the checklist and verify that we're ready to run the election. We're not done yet. It's an ongoing process still.
When specifically did you start this process? Do you have a date?
So we started when we heard through the grapevine there would be a potential piece of legislation coming out. When announcements started coming out, we as registrars became proactive because you can't wait till it's already done and approved. You have to start lining up as quickly as possible. So we are already started this a couple of weeks ago when the word was out that there was likely a possible piece of legislation coming through. So across the state, we started contacting our vendors, our contacts to say, in the event this happens, we want to make sure that we're ready for it. So that's primarily how we've approached it.
So you haven't signed any contracts with vendors or
At
done
this
anything
point,
yet?
we
You
have
just
not.
contacted them?
Yes, we are contacting them to see their availability, to see if there's locations available. So we're in the process of doing that because, again, this hasn't officially been passed yet. We're not going to be able to do it until we know this legislation's passed. But you try and front load it as much as you can. And that's true of any election. You try and front load as much as you can in that process.
Interesting. If the justification for urgency is political advantage rather than a true emergency, does this not set a very dangerous precedent for future legislatures?
Well, I find it interesting that your line of questioning is on the timing and on the finance when your own party called for the recall in 2021 special election.
We're not talking about the recall. I don't know why this keeps getting brought up today. I'd really like to stick to the merits of the bill. So no answer for that.
I gave you my response.
Would any of the witnesses like to answer that question? I'm sure it'll come up in court, but okay. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you.